where we're answering some contemporary questions that we have by our partnership as a result of the current situation with COVID-19. I see that we are continually adding attendees, and when that number stops clicking up, we will begin. And I think that everyone who has registered is being let into the webinar. And thank you very much for attending, and thank you very much for your patience. We're going to begin today with a few remarks by the agency director, Dr. J. Scott Angle. Scott?
Well, thank you, Bill, and thank you for everyone for joining us. These are interesting times. Did want to let you know, first of all, that for NIFA, we're able to more or less stay on our current work schedule. We don't have laboratories, and we're not out in the field, and we're not attending to farms or out on extension visits. So we stay in our office or our homes, and we're getting the work done for the most part. What has really changed and where we're all being impacted is by work that is underway at the universities and other partners of ours. I know many of you are closed to one extent or not, or another, and everyone is in a different position right now, so it's been very hard to come up with one size accommodation fits all, but we're doing our best to answer your questions and help you get through this difficult time. I want to give you a sense of the types of things that are going on right now that ultimately are going to impact the work that you do. First of all, there's some intent within NIFA already to redirect some funds to help with the immediate response to COVID-19. That is moving very quickly. You'll see some language through AFRI here relatively soon, if not already. We are talking internally about a relatively small but long-term program, at least 5 years, that would allow us to continue to provide support for issues directly related to either COVID-19 or the unfortunately next pandemic that we'll be faced with. A few other things are going on. Many of these are being supported by APLU and partners of ours, but just to give you a sense of the level of activity on Capitol Hill right now, there's quite a large request. This is in the billions of dollar range to develop a infrastructure, some infrastructure support. As all of you know, many of the experiment station and ag facilities throughout your state are run down and need some help. And hold on here, we think that there will be some support through Congress. Now, this is being carried by APLU and some of their partners, so it has NIFA does not have a lot to do with this, but I know that request is going forward. I think all of you know that a lot of the research that's underway right now has been shuttered because graduate students, postdocs, even sometimes faculty have been sent home. And so the work is not being performed in a timely way. We know that research is going to be late as a result of done. And so APLU again, SOAR and others are looking at congressional support to provide funded supplements for research that was not conducted on the schedule that was originally determined. We've asked everyone to keep your staff employed and on the payroll, but they may be home. They may not be in the laboratory or in the field or on a farmer's field if it's an extension or in a home. So that's another effort that's underway. There's another request that APLU is promoting to help with extension. It's a relatively large one to make sure that the lessons that we have learned from the COVID-19 virus can be deployed for future issues. And there's also a couple other small things that are underway, but those are the main ones. Our concern, and this will also require some activity through our partners, is if any of this were to come through and be successful, we, because of, for a number of reasons, don't have enough capacity to handle those funds. And so we are having discussions right now just to make sure that we're ready if any of this is successful, to be able to get those funds out the door in a timely manner. So we're developing language to take forward to Capitol Hill if we're requested to do that. That would allow us some flexibility in how this money is being spent, and also some hiring to make sure that we have some people on staff to handle these extra duties. So these are all good things. I think these are things that for the most part, we have heard from the land grants and our partners that this is the type of thing you would like to see happen. We're certainly supportive of all of it, and let's hope that APLU and others are successful in this effort. So just a lot going on right now, but we want to take this time to answer questions that you may have, whether it's something current or in the future. Obviously, you have questions about what you are doing right now and how NIFA can help you with that, and also the long-term, what opportunities might be available to you. So with that, Bill, I'll just turn it back over to you and let's get going.
Thank you, Scott. We have been advised by our technical people to only have the speakers video running to cut down on the bandwidth. We have some 400 participants at the webinar today, and so we wanted to make sure that we got all of your questions answered. Our main speaker today is going to be Katina Hansen. She is with our Office of Grants and Financial Management and heads up our policy division. Katina will have a presentation, and she will answer some of your questions, some of which you have already submitted. If you have already submitted a question, we might or might not provide the answer to you on this webinar today, but we will provide you an answer. And if we get enough of those type of questions, we'll add it to our frequently asked questions document. Many of the questions that we recently received are still getting an opinion from our Office of General Counsel. Katina, please begin your presentation.
All right. Hi, everyone. I have met some of you over the years. Many of you I have not. I came to NIFA about a month ago from the Farm Service Agency. So I've had a long career with USDA, and I even went to a land grant university like many of my USDA colleagues, and worked at a agricultural experiment station when I was in college. So I'm not a stranger to NIFA's programs for sure. My son is part of 4-H, and I could go on probably for a long list of reasons why NIFA programs are really important to me. But I will get into the presentation since we started a little bit late here. Just one moment while I share it with you. Hey, Bill, can you confirm that the presentation is showing?
I see overview of USDA NIFA implementation of policies related to COVID-19 and frequently asked questions, April 2020.
Great.
We have
Okay.
also can see it from as a participant. So.
Okay, perfect. All right. So I am going to take you through a pretty dense set of materials here. I want to make sure that you're all aware of the flexibilities that we are providing that have been generated to help you in this difficult time. And also, we have a number of frequently asked questions where we have provided answers on our website. I'm going to go through those, and there's even some that are brand new today as we respond to the questions that are coming in. Okay, so we at NIFA are prioritizing the health and safety of the research community and all of our partners. We are working to try to have the greatest flexibilities to support you, to support our applicants, the grantees, and our employees at NIFA. And we are continually updating our guidance and our online resources. So in order to keep staff and partners informed, we're updating things such as the deadlines for extensions and frequently asked questions on a very regular basis, daily, every few days. As we have answers to your questions, we are getting them up there. NIFA is accepting proposals for certain important research and activities right now already. So we have that are related to the coronavirus. So those are being updated on our coronavirus website. So if you have not visited that yet, it's just our nifa.usda.gov/coronavirus. There's lots of links there. There's links to the programs where we are accepting proposals, and also links to these deadline extensions and the frequently asked questions. There are 3 major memorandums that have come out from the White House Office of Management and Budget. M20-11 was the first. M20-17 provided a lot of information and flexibilities, and that is the one that we have provided our own interpretation of how that works for NIFA, so to help you to understand how it works for NIFA. And we continue to look at that memorandum, and also the M20-20, which came out just recently, and we're looking at what flexibilities are potentially available under that one as far as repurposing financial assistance. So there's lots of activities around this, and it is a changing dynamic. So if you have questions, if you have things that you need to be successful right now, please let us know. We have awards at USDA.gov. We're basically, the majority of the questions are going through that so that we can get them to the right people. We have some other emails that will be listed throughout the presentation, but if you send a question to that awards website, we will make sure that the right folks get your questions so they can get answered as quickly as possible. We are having daily meetings with leadership to try to triage questions and get them answered as quickly as we can. So the time limitations on the M20-17, which is the major memorandum that came out from the White House Office of Management and Budget, that is good for 90 days from when it was published, which was March 19th. We will be updating our guidance as needed at that time, and as additional guidance comes out. So they're going to reassess that at the 90-day mark from March 19th. Okay, so the first thing that is covered in the M20-17 memo is that current registrants in SAMs will, with active registrations that expire before May 16th of 2020, will be automatically afforded a one-time extension of 60 days. We also had questions about whether we had to have a SAMS registration in place at application. Right now, we are waiving that. The National Program Leader can waive that requirement for the SAMS registration at time of application. We still have to have that SAMS registration in place at the time of award. So that is something that was provided under these memos as a flexibility as well. The application deadlines, we have extended a number of deadlines, and we have those deadline extensions listed. You can get to it through that coronavirus webpage or directly through this link, which is the NIFA deadline extensions. So I encourage you to visit that website or to visit our coronavirus website, and you can get more information about those deadline extensions. If the application is delayed beyond those extensions and there's extenuating circumstances, we do have policy in place for late application consideration. So this is the web page for getting that late application consideration. That's also linked to the web page that has those deadline extensions. So if you need to find it, you can find it. There's also some flexibility, which we haven't used yet, for a waiver of the notice of funding opportunities. And so that's something that we may utilize at NIFA in the future to provide opportunities, but we have not at this point. As for no cost extensions, and I know many of you have had questions about this, for the competitive grants, they're generally allowed a no cost extension of up to 12 months under NIFA policy without prior approval. Right now, we need you to follow those standard procedures for the competitive grants. I know that there are questions about those that have already had one extension that may need an additional extension. We are working on an answer for you related to that as well, and that is likely a program by program answer. For the non-competitive capacity grants, due to the impacts of social distancing, NIFA is also going to allow no cost extensions for non-competitive capacity grants that expire September 30th, 2020 that have a remaining balance. So the 5-year grants will be allowed a 6-month extension, and that's so that we can make sure that in that last year of funds availability, since the money actually goes away at the 6th year, that we have time for folks to be able to draw down that money. So for 5-year grants, it will be a 6-month extension, and for the 2-year grants, it will be a 1-year extension. The period of performance will be extended accordingly, and recipients that have grants in this disposition, meaning that they have grants that are expiring September 30th, 2020, and they still have a balance on that award in August, we will send out a notification in writing in early August 2020 with a list of the grants that are eligible for the no cost extension for non-competitive capacity, and we'll provide instructions on how to submit your request for that deadline, for that extension, the no cost extension. So the deadline for that will be September 1st, 2020. If you think that you're going to be in that situation, I just encourage you to mark your calendar for that so that we can make sure that we get that extension in place for you. In the OMB memo, there was a section that was titled Abbreviated Non-Competitive Continuation Requests. We provided in our policy information for you about overall for continuation requests. Those continuation requests that are scheduled to come in from April 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020 from competitive award projects that have planned future support. NIFA will accept a brief written statement from recipients to verify they are in the position to resume or restore their project activities and accept a planned continuation award. The recipient has to follow all other continuation related requirements described in the award terms and conditions. And we will be examining this future need to extend this approach on subsequent continuation award start dates as recipients have an opportunity to assess the situation. We do understand that some are looking for more information about what will be allowed as far as carryover. We are looking at that. Also, what will be allowed as match. We are looking at that for each of the programs. And the continuation authority as well for capacity grants and other areas that may not be covered by our current policy. So we are continuing to look at those issues and work with council to develop procedure for you. So allowability of salaries and other project activities. This was a very important area, and it's going to be covered in quite a few slides here. Recipients are authorized to continue to charge salaries, stipends, and benefits to currently active USDA NIFA awards, consistent with the recipient's policy of paying salaries under unexpected or extraordinary circumstances like we have now, from all funding sources, federal and non-federal. In general, recipients should utilize the salary, stipends, and benefit rates and staffing levels that were in place March 1st, 2020. We encourage you to use those levels as your benchmark. We did not make that a strict policy because we understand that there's a lot of different issues going on right now. But March 1st was when President Trump proclaimed that the COVID-19 outbreak constituted a national emergency. So we encourage you to use that date. The recipient also is authorized to charge other costs to USDA NIFA awards that are necessary to resume activities supported by the award, consistent with the federal cost principles and the benefits to the project. Recipients must not assume, though, that supplemental funding will be available. We hope that it will be, but we can't guarantee that supplemental funding will be available. If a recipient faces challenges to meet the program objectives of the award, they should contact the national program leader in the final year of that award and evaluate how to proceed with the work. If you have any concerns related to these salary, stipends, and benefit rates and staffing levels, or anticipated shortfalls or other administrative options, which might include these no-cost extensions or change in scope, please send your inquiries to awards@usda.gov. NIFA will evaluate the grantee's ability to resume the project activity in the future and the appropriateness of future funding, as done in under normal circumstances, though we understand things are not quite normal right now. We will look at those subsequent project reports and other communications with the recipient. Recipients are required to maintain appropriate records and cost documentation. Can NIFA grant recipients use funds under their NIFA grant to pay hazard pay? This has been asked by quite a few folks. Hazard pay may be paid consistent with the grantee organization's policies, state and federal laws. Federal employees that are under NIFA grants must follow the policies of their employing agency. Recipients must not assume that supplemental funding again will be available should these charges result in a shortage of funds. Recipients who incur costs related to the cancellation of events, travel, or other activities necessary and reasonable for the performance of the award, or the pausing and restarting of grant-funded activities due to the public health emergency, are authorized to charge these costs to their award, without regard to 2 CFR 200.403, 404, or 405. Recipients may charge the full cost to the award when the event, travel, or other activities are conducted under the auspices of the grant. But they, again, can't assume that that supplemental funding will be there. And they do have to maintain, again, the appropriate records and cost documentation. If you anticipate a shortfall, you should contact awards@usda.gov for the competitive grants, or capacity grant questions at usda.gov for capacity grants. So just kind of saying this in a different way, but what do we do with conference grants and conferences already scheduled? I know many of you have already been in this situation. If your conference needs to be delayed, please check your award terms and conditions for information on how to request that no-cost extension. And if your organization cancels an approved conference due to the impacts of COVID-19, the costs incurred are allowable costs under the award. If your organization is rescheduling the conference due to the impacts of COVID-19 and your organization later holds the conference, whether in person or virtually, during the award period of performance, and the costs were otherwise allowable costs prior to the cancellation, and your organization took mitigation steps to reduce any financial loss of award funds, then NIFA will allow the associated costs. A few other notes on canceled or rescheduled conferences. The balance of the award funds may not be increased by the amount of funds expended on canceled conference costs, at least not at this point. Your institution will need to provide a justification and provide that to awards@usda.gov. Any losses by persons or activities not directly funded under the award are not covered, such as attendee airline change fees or increases in their later airline ticket purchases. If the project cannot be completed in the original duration or budget, what are my options? If a recipient faces challenge to meet the award program objectives, they should contact the national program leader in the final year of the award and evaluate how to proceed with the work. We are asking you to do that because we don't know yet if there will be those supplemental funds and what options that we can provide you as far as the increasing your budget. We do know that we can provide the no-cost extension at this point, and hopefully that meets many of your needs. Besides the administrative options, supplemental funding requests may be considered, and I'd say those supplemental funding requests need to come to awards@usda.gov to discuss the allowability of salaries, stipends and benefits, and other administrative options that could be done. The prior approval requirement waiver, this is one that we are looking at. We do have waivers for prior approvals for NIFA overall. For competitive grants and for capacity grants, we're looking at if there's any additional flexibilities there. USDA, if you need to contact someone about prior approvals, again, for competitive, awards@usda.gov, and for capacity equipment at usda.gov. Recipients are reminded that they are to ensure that all costs charged to federal awards must be consistent with federal cost policy guidelines and the terms and conditions of the award. except as specified in the guidance that we provided. So there's an exemption of certain procurement requirements also. So USDA NIFA has waived the procurement requirements contained in 2 CFR 200.319B regarding geographical preferences, and also those regarding contracting with small and minority businesses, women business enterprises, and labor surplus area firms. And that is for the length of the memo, the M-20-17, which again was 3 months from March 19th. We also have extensions of financial performance and other reporting. NIFA will allow grantees to delay submission of financial performance and other reports up to 90 days beyond the normal due date. Grantees can continue to draw down federal funds from ASAP without the timely submission of these reports. However, these reports must be submitted at the end of that postponed period. In addition, NIFA may waive the requirement for recipients to notify the agency of problems, delays, or adverse conditions related to COVID-19 during the effective period of the memo. Also, there was extension of the currently approved indirect cost rates. Recipients may continue to use the currently approved indirect cost rates, predetermined, fixed, or provisional rates, to recover their indirect costs on federal awards. Recipients may request an extension on the use of the current rates for 1 additional year without submission of an indirect cost proposal. And if you need more information on NIFA indirect costs, that's at our nifa.usda.gov/indirect costs. Recipients also may submit a request to their cognizant agency for an extension of the indirect cost rate proposal submission to finalize the current rates and establish for future rates. Okay, we're getting close to the end of the provisions under this memo. The extension of closeout. USDA NIFA has automatically extended the due date for submission of all final project reports, financial reports, and project outcome reports that are due between March 1st and April 30th, 2020 by 90 days. Again, we may revisit those dates. Recipients are reminded that NIFA cannot make any new award or supplement any existing award if the PI or any co-PIs has an overdue final report. Therefore, it's vital that the final reports be submitted by the revised due date. And the final one is extension of a single audit submission. Recipients and subrecipients that have not yet filed their single audits with the Federal Audit Clearinghouse as of the date of the issuance of the OMB memorandum, March 19th, that have fiscal year ends through June 30th, 2020 are authorized to delay the completion and submission of the single audit reporting package. It will be delayed to 6 months beyond the normal due date. No formal approval for this extension is required. However, recipients and subrecipients must maintain documentation of the reason for the delayed filing. Also, if recipients and subrecipients were low-risk auditees, they will continue to qualify as low-risk auditees unless there's other reasons for a change in that qualification. Recipients should contact their cognizant agency for the audit with any questions related to single audit. For USDA NIFA questions on single audit questions, that should go to policy@usda.gov. Okay, we made it through the memo policy. So the OMB memos, NIFA has provided policy in follow-up to those. So we made it through that portion of the presentation. We do have some additional frequently asked questions that we'll go through quickly, and then we should have time to take at least a few questions from the chat. Okay, so if you have a project with relevance to COVID-19, we do have certain NIFA programs that will allow submission, including AFRI and SBIR. Please visit the NIFA coronavirus website for the latest information on that, and watch for upcoming RFAs and existing ones. Over the past few weeks, we have published a few of those. Are there any flexibilities to allow donation of personal protective equipment or PPE, or the use of staff or equipment funded through NIFA grants to produce PPE? Yes, recipients may donate PPE and other lab supplies in support of the efforts related to COVID-19, or use staff or equipment funded through NIFA grants to produce PPE. Recipients may rebudget grant funds to repurchase supplies at a later date or use unobligated balances. Recipients must not assume, again, that supplemental funding will be available should the charging of these costs or other fees result in a shortage. Recipients must also maintain appropriate records and cost documentation for any donated supplies. So due to the flexibilities provided by OMB 20-17 and associated NIFA policy, do those apply to sub-recipients? NIFA does encourage recipients to flow down these same flexibilities to sub-recipients. Again, what are my options if the COVID-19 emergency does not allow me to complete the project? The project directors can contact the NIFA National Program Leader assigned to that project in the last year of the project to discuss a number of options. Since these options are needed toward the end of the project, additional information about this topic will be provided at a later date. So many of you, classes are canceled. How do we complete the grant program requirements? My grant requires classroom instruction. If a recipient faces challenges to meet the program objectives of the award due to class cancellations that directly impact the completion of your grant objectives, they should contact the National Program Leader to discuss and evaluate how to proceed with the work. Other options, again, could include no cost extensions, change in scope, or termination. A couple questions on study abroad. Can the FY 2020 proposals include study abroad programs, which include sending students abroad in 2021? Yes, we don't have any policy against that at this time. Our NIFA award includes study abroad program in summer 2020. Can that be postponed to 2021? Yes, if the grant is going to be active in the summer of 2021, then they can do that. We are currently developing policies related to FY 2020 students studying abroad still. And there again are a number of options for your grant. We did have a question whether we are still conducting our civil rights compliance reviews. We are still conducting those. We're extending some deadlines for grantees to provide us with compliance documentation for the open compliance reviews. For new reviews, we'll utilize technology and desk reviews to respect the social distancing requirements. The NIFA EEO staff is also providing technical assistance remotely and planning webinars to assist our partners in understanding their civil rights obligations. Couple of questions related to GusNIP. Can the pandemic EBT or disaster SNAP benefits be counted as SNAP benefits for the purposes of earning a GusNIF incentive? And the answer is yes. PEBT and DSNAP are considered SNAP benefits. Households can earn GusNIF incentives when they make qualifying purchases using PEBT or DSNAP benefits. And can a GusNIF grantee reallocate fruit and vegetable incentives from one site to another site to better assist particularly food insecure populations who are being affected by COVID-19? And the answer is yes. This would be considered a program change and should be reported to USDA and NIFA as required in the GusNIF RFA. Recipients should follow CDC guidelines to reduce potential of COVID-19 transmission to any vulnerable populations. And although this is not directly related to these questions, I know a number of you have inquired whether there's any impact to our ASAP operations during this period of social distancing, and the answer is no. We are all working remotely. As always, if you have any ASAP questions that need to be addressed to NIFA, please contact ASAP customer service at USDA.gov. And just to recap where all of this information is, I know I've gone through a lot and it's quite dense information. The NIFA coronavirus website has all of these frequently asked questions. It also has a copy of the notice that NIFA published on follow-up to the OMB memos. Also has the normal email newsletter and our deadline extensions due to COVID-19. There's some USDA messages on COVID-19 there and other resources as well as some external resources. So with that, I think we'll open it up for a few chat questions. I know that Bill Hoffman was going to look through those and pick out some that we could answer today, and then others we'll try to answer down the line. You can, if you did not get your questions into the chat today, you can submit any additional questions related to COVID-19 to awards@usda.gov. And we have people that are looking at those and triaging those every day. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Katina. I would ask that any questions be entered into the question and answer box at the bottom. Right now, you should see a 5 at that Q&A box. One question is there a consideration of an extension to June 1 for submission of the annual program of work reports? That is an excellent question. I don't think that we've made a determination on that, but that is something that we will keep you posted on in the frequently asked questions document that Katina mentioned. Does any of this affect the report of accomplishments, OGFM, or institutional profiles requirement beyond what has already changed? Katina, can you address that question?
Okay, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Does any of this affect the report of accomplishments, OGFM, or institutional profiles requirements beyond what has already changed?
Okay, I don't believe so. I will take that back and we'll look at it. And if we need to, we'll add a frequently asked question for you.
And Diane Mashburn, if you would like to email me personally and maybe explain just a little bit more about your question, that's something that we can that we might be able to more deeply answer. Katina, does the keep the staff paid and on payroll also automatically include researchers and staff paid with NIFA flow-through funds received through block grants to states, i.e. specialty crop, through foundations and industry? Now, I'll remind the anonymous attendee that the specialty crop block grants program is administered through the Agricultural Marketing Service. And so that would be a question. That would be a question for them. However, the institutions are allowed to continue to pay researchers and staff paid with NIFA funds that are capacity funds, like Hatch, Smith Lever, Evans Allen, and 1890s Extension. Is no-cost extension available for awards with expiring Treasury authorization?
So we do not have the ability to do that right now. I think that it is something that has been brought up by multiple research agencies as, you know, a hurdle. So we are able, if it's a 5-year grant and it's expiring this year, we're able to extend that for an additional 6 months so that you can go ahead and continue to finish up the work on your grant and then have the last 6 months of the year to finish drawing down any additional funds. We want to make sure that with the extension, you're able to also get paid for it.
This from Allie Mitchell, up in the Northeast Extension Executive Director. Can you give us a heads up on any multi-state grants related to COVID-19 coming up that will be available to cooperative extension services? Also, what's the best way to provide information that will be useful to you as you develop grant language or new programs? The first part of that the answer to that first part of that question is yes. If you haven't already, Allie, please subscribe to our NIFA update, and you can go there and subscribe through our website and hit newsroom, and you can subscribe to the NIFA update that comes out every Wednesday. That's the best place to go to find out about multi-state grants related to COVID-19 that might be becoming available. The best way to provide information that will be useful to us as we develop grant language or new programs. You know, one of the ways that we accept feedback, Allie, is through the, every RFA has an opportunity listed, a mailbox listed, that you can provide helpful feedback and helpful information for us to be able to improve that RFA. If something is COVID-19 specific, as far as information that would aid program development, you can provide that information either to me or whatever contacts you may have at USDA NIFA, any of the programmatic contacts.
And those types of information that's related to COVID-19, we are getting a lot of those questions through our awards at USDA.gov email address. So if you want to email that, those are getting triaged on a daily basis.
Thank you. Will CRIS projects be extended? You know, every one of our projects is in the CRIS system. And so, you know, that's the answer to that question will vary based on what type of projects it is. But I think Katina did a good job of outlining the different types of extensions that can be offered. If you have a particular question on that, contact awards.gov or your program manager.
Yeah, so just to reiterate on that, so for the competitive grants, they're going to look to their terms and conditions for what to do about a no-cost extension. And for the non-competitive capacity grants, The 5 years are going to be allowed a 6-month extension, and the 2 years are going to be allowed that 1-year extension. And we will be sending out letters to anyone that has a balance still on their grant that is, and these are just for the ones that are expiring September 30th, 2020. We'll be sending out that notice or letter to them to let them know that there is a balance there and ask them if they want to extend, and they'll need to respond by September 1st.
James Lewis asks, do we continue to pay all program staff at the March levels, or should they be adjusted to coordinate with the award budget? Example, miscellaneous wages can vary. Should student A be paid $1,000 in March, get $1,000 in April and May if they were budgeted for $500?
So I think they would go by their normal budget and by whatever procedures are in place for their institution.
When will the Animal Health and Disease Research RFA be released for 2020?
I know that we're working on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go ahead. Yeah, I know that we're working on it. I expect that it will happen soon.
Will there be a rollover of the funds at for the 1890 scholarships? Dr. Walker, I would expect an announcement very soon about the 1890 scholarships, but I'll let Katina discuss about rolling over those funds.
So I think that we're going to have some additional guidance that comes out in relation to carryover, and we'll look at that as well at that time. So we'll expect that information to come out soon.
And Mark Lattimore, can we get a copy of the slide presentation? Excellent instructions. Thank you very much, Dr. Lattimore. We are recording this presentation, and if all three of these things is high quality, the audio, the video, and the closed captioning, all three are high quality, we're going to be putting this on this presentation on YouTube. If for some reason one of those three components is not up to our quality standards, we will provide a copy of this presentation. However, Dr. Lattimore, even better than this presentation, keep checking back at those frequently asked questions. That's really the best place, because it seems like every day or every other day we're adding either one or multiple frequently asked questions. And if you just had this presentation, you would not have the complete and up-to-date picture. So even if we make this presentation available, I would continue to use as your main document that set of frequently asked questions. But thank you. If facilities funds are expiring as of 9/30, will an additional extension be automatically provided no matter how long the funds are dated? Katina, that's all you.
All right, I think we'll have to get back to him on that question. We'll make sure and add that to the list.
And Patricia, make sure that you copy me in on the awards.gov, the awards at NIFA.gov, and we'll make sure that that gets answered. When should we expect to see capacity funds released? We're already beginning. The first ones that you'll see released are the FNEP awards. We're already working through those, and we are working through the rest of the capacity awards in turn. We're hoping to get most of those capacity awards released here in the coming weeks. Do we expect COVID-19 to have a major impact on the budget for federal programs moving forward, specifically as it relates to the grant funding for specialty crops? Also, should we expect rescission, re existing USDA budgets? I will say that the funding for the Specialty Crop Research Initiative is mandatory funding through the Farm Bill. And so, that we're pretty confident that Specialty Crop Research Initiative funding is going to continue year after year after year because it is mandatory through the Farm Bill. Expect a rescission. That's really a hypothetical that we really can't address versus in our existing USDA budgets. I always hate to predict what Congress might or might not do, and that's pretty much what that would take. Katrina, you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Do you anticipate the current situation with COVID-19 will affect funding rates next year? Again, that's not something that we really have any control over. We're hoping that the work that you folks do out at the partnership is highly valued, and we know it is. And I think that this problem would be so much worse if not for the research, some of the research that you folks have done to date, some of the research that you folks are going to be working with some of our deadlines for the AFRI program that were extended and the SBIR program, and the fabulous work that the Cooperative Extension Service is doing with the COVID-19. And so I hope that folks see the value, and I know that you folks are experts at demonstrating that value. When will FY20 funds be available in ASAP? I assume that means the capacity funding, and we've kind of already touched on that, haven't we, Katina?
Yeah, I know that Waits and Chris are both on the line. Chris Kopenbarger is our awards management acting division director, and Waits Wallerson is our financial management division director. Do either of you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I can comment. This is Chris Kopenbarger. So we have about a quarter of the capacity awards released. So some of those have already been sent to ASAP, and those funds are available. We have some that are just going through the process of being allocated to the ASAP accounts. So for those awards that we've made, that ASAP funds, or the funds are not available in the ASAP, they should be available just in the coming days.
Thank you.
This is Waits Rollerson. I don't have anything to add beyond what Chris has just mentioned.
Thanks so much, Waits. Is the amount of fund available for 2020 project submission will be still the same or expected to decline? That's a little cryptic for me. I'm not quite sure what the questioner is trying to get to. Do you have any insight on that? Hassam, if you would, you feel free to email me directly, and we'll see if we can work through your question to make it a little bit clearer to us. But thank you for the question. Who will those emails go to for seeing if we want to request an extension on capacity funds?
So for the capacity extensions, we are going to send out a letter to any of the awards that have a balance. So in early August, we're going to send out a letter, any awards that expire September 30th of 2020 and have a balance. And those are the universe of folks that are available for that no cost extension. And then we will provide instructions on how to submit that response to request the extension. So we're kind of pushing that off just a little bit so that we can make sure that we get the right folks that extension. Again, we will be trying to think about other situation that folks might be in. If you do not fall into that group that expires September 30th and will have a balance, but you have a continuing need, please email awards@usda.gov and describe your situation so that we can make sure that we have the right people thinking about the best solutions we can give you.
All right, and this is Chris Kopenberg again. Let me jump in on this one. And if this, Melissa, if this question goes to who at the university will receive this information, those would be the individuals that are designated as authorized representatives inside of the Easy Fed grant system.
Thank you, Chris. And finally, will individual multi-state projects and committees be allowed to extend to a 6th year?
I think that's a new question that we'll have to add to our list for brainstorming.
Thank you, anonymous attendee. That is a new question. I hadn't heard that one before. Folks, we've come to the end of the open questions. I want to thank you for tuning in. Please visit our coronavirus page at www.nifa.usda.gov/coronavirus. It's also easy to find if you just go to our homepage. We have 5 or 6 or 4 banner hero headlines up, and our coronavirus page is one of them. And so if you wait for it to flip through, when you see that coronavirus picture, click on that, and that will take you to our coronavirus page. The best resource on there, absolutely the best, and the most often updated, is our frequently asked questions page. Essentially, if you go to that website, you'll get almost everything that Katina talked about today, and you'll probably get something a little bit more because we're continually adding to that. Again, folks, on behalf of the entire agency, we thank you for tuning into this webinar, and we look forward to working through the challenges that you folks have as we all work through this crisis. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thanks. Be safe.